Oh, wait, do you see something that says app is not focused? I don't know what that means.
No, that's just you early, man.
It says app is not focused.
You're not focused.
I haven't had my coffee. All right, let's get going. All right, welcome to episode 7, the QCI show, where commercial real estate meets chaos, clarity, and occasionally Taylor Swift engagement conspiracies. Good morning to you, Chase. How are you doing, my man?
I'm rocking and rolling, man. This is like the ideal time for me.
It's early.
This is
Filming
5:30.
live.
I'm
Filming live 5:30 on the East Coast here, trying to get
up,
it done.
up and cooking. Yeah, why are you on my time zone? I kind of run on like Icelandic or like Eastern Brazilian time. So what are we doing?
I got stuff going on today. I'm supposed to play golf, or I am playing golf. I was supposed to play golf with a couple of good friends at Boston Properties. This is I think the second or third time that I've invited these guys out to play. And just conveniently every day the night before, I get the old 100,000-foot lease tour. Just moved, man. Sorry, can't make it.
Yeah, the Acme Corporation is touring again.
Yeah, I don't know. 100,000-foot lease. We do a couple of those a year. That's beach house money. I don't know what that is. But anyways, we got a good group. We actually did fill it with some folks from Hines doing the South Station Tower. Matt Murray, can't believe about the name. So it should be a good day. Hey, we got to film at 5:30. I have not slept a wink. My wife was out last night. So I made the kids chicken nuggets. And then it must have been 2 weeks old, pad thai sitting in the back of the fridge.
Nice.
Decided to dip in there. But hey, the show must go on. We don't wait for anybody. All right. Let's get into the anchor story today. So we talked a little bit about a couple shows ago, eminent domain. I didn't really have a backstory. You went on and were quoting fucking legal cases like a goddamn expert in eminent domain. I thought it was government overreach. But what a segue into today's story. The anchor story today, Trump's administration is apparently set to take over DC's Union Station. DC's Union Station is a $10 billion asset sitting at the center of DC's redevelopment act. The reason, I guess Trump said that Amtrak and DC's Union Station management is underperformance. The Department of Transportation is coming in to take over. What do you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, from a legal perspective,
You got case law for me again?
I got a little bit of legal perspective. So for listeners, this isn't just AI. My sister is a lawyer, so I do ask her about these things. Yeah. And she's a professor of the law at your esteemed alma mater, Babson College. But so the Department of Transportation technically does own Union Station through the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration. They've owned it since 1981 under the Union Station Redevelopment Act. So technically they own it, but Amtrak has the rights, and Amtrak in 2022 actually invoked something called quick take eminent domain to seize the commercial lease from a group called Rexmark. Law aside, I'm probably on whoever Rexmark's side is, because great name, right?
So unless we don't get trademark approval for Rex and real estate experiments, then we'll have an issue.
Then we're against them for sure. Then we're definitely against them. But they apparently settled in February of 2025. But long story short, number one, I'm a big Amtrak rider. We have an office at Penn Station, New York, little 128 station to down to Penn. I love. And here's what I'll say. Like, I have not been to Union Station, so I can't comment on. I think a lot of the dispute is around, they're doing a lot of, the administration is doing a lot of kind of using safety to, I would say, push the boundaries of what they're allowed to do as the different federal agencies and things like that. I can't really comment on those things, but I think when we think about updating city infrastructure and all these, I'd like to see a little glass get broken to make our infrastructure more competitive. Now, I think I've read the quote that the feds are saying that they can, one, it's a point for vagrancy. and that they can do better management at a fraction of the cost, which typically it's not the Fed saying they can do better management at the fraction of the cost, good enough for government work type
Right.
stuff. It'll be interesting to see the legality of it all. But from a service perspective,
Okay.
we've been talking about catching up to other countries' rail infrastructure for God knows how long. So I wouldn't mind seeing some aggressive, at least even if they don't win, putting some pressure back onto Amtrak and others to make it work, right?
Yeah, I'll say two things quickly. So on the infrastructure, so this also was out, I don't know, earlier this summer, a couple of weeks ago. Amtrak now has trains that are capable of going up to 160 miles per hour. Those trains are launching on the Boston, New York line. So that is something that you will take. The issue is our tracks cannot support that speed. So regardless if the train can support, so you need to update the actual infrastructure. So station or not, station to station doesn't really work. The tracks need to be upgraded. Number two is, and I don't know the answer to this, and maybe we'll have to circle back and call back this on a different show after I do research, but do you know the history of Penn Station and so how Moynihan came to be? Because as I think I'm trying to draw parallels here, where now Moynihan wasn't developed by the federal government; it was developed by Vornado. But if you talk about a critical key infrastructure redevelopment, Moynihan train station in New York City is the gold star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about Amtrak as a business, but I like any situation where there's competition, right? And Amtrak doesn't exactly have competition in the Northeast corridor. I do think the 160 mile an hour is the wrong target, right? That's like saying, hey, other countries have cars, let's build a better bicycle. Like, look at the rail in China, Japan, other areas of the
Right.
world that's bullet trains and all that stuff. Like 160 miles an hour, like, give me a break. Like, that takes the ride from Boston to New York from 3.5 hours to like 3. Like, come on, we can do better. It's literally proven in other areas of the world we can do better. So I like putting some pressure on. There's over 50 million people between Boston and DC, about 17% of the US population on 2% of our land. We talk a lot about this, and obviously the Quantum City framework, which is it's an incredibly important economic cluster. The GDP of the whole area is about $5.3 trillion in 2022, and that's bigger than both France and the UK. So it's 20% of all US jobs. Like, we got to raise our game. I don't know about the legality, and I'm not commenting on the tactics of the administration. I'm not dangerous enough on that, but I like the outcome that we're shooting for here, which is there needs to be upgrades up and down the stack, in my opinion.
I think that's the most important thing is if you think about retrofitting a city or what a future city is, transportation in and out of the city, what's surrounding the buildings, whether it's homelessness, whatever it is. Like the other thing with the Moynihan train station is it's cleaning up the Penn Station area, which was not a safe area to be around. Now it certainly is, or it's getting better. I think this is a huge move. Again, you hit us with the case law, you hit us with the sort of legal side of the house. Is it an overreach? No, they own it. The federal government, that is. But this is critical. We need more of this. We need absolutely more of this. We need to upgrade the infrastructure. We need to make our cities great again. Trump, you can use that one. That's a freebie.
I'm sure he will.
That's a
Yeah.
freebie.
Well, Amtrak's been leaning on their case against Rexmark was, they have the, I think, right and obligation to do things in the safety of passengers. And
Yeah.
so if it isn't safe down in Union Station, I don't know if it is or isn't. It would be a little bit of I believe that's called rope-a-dope in legal
Yeah.
terms. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't imagine
Using it on them. You know what I'm saying?
Can't imagine it is, seeing that Trump also has the National Guard in DC to clean it up and protect it. So we're seeing trends. Good anchor story. I'm interested to see where this thing goes.
I'm all for our major transportation hubs being upgraded. So hopefully regardless of who does it, hopefully it's a huge net benefit for everyone. This would be great for productivity up and down the corridor.
How do you make airports? How do you upgrade that infrastructure? Now, Logan in Boston just did a ton. There's a new terminal there, predominantly occupied by Virgin. That's much nicer. It's cleaner, less rats. How do you upgrade that infrastructure? I get the rail system. Seeing what happened, taking the train from Penn to now hopping in on Moynihan. I get that. How do you upgrade it? What do you do with airports? Planes got to come in and out. You just need a lot of airplane hangars.
I'm a big train guy.
Okay. So no planes. We're not taking planes. Okay. We're not taking planes.
Even though planes are safer, I'm constantly delayed. See, I'm actually okay with our airports. I think the airports you're seeing upgrades in terminals everywhere. Airports are a good deep dive for us to do on a future show
Yeah, we'll
because
do
they're
that.
a fascinating business. But our airlines absolutely suck compared to, you look at like Singapore and some of the other airlines that make the economics work. And so if you go back into when airlines started to get far more regulated, shocker, when there's overregulation and margin starts to go to zero, quality goes down pretty rapidly after that. So we'll do a deep dive on that. But I think we need to do something with regards to the airlines because our airlines are just lacking compared to some of the global leaders.
Yeah. All right. Good anchor. We're going into the history of Penn Station and we're going into the airlines and upcoming shows. Okay, let's get to quick hits. I'm headed to Vegas in a week and a half, 2 weeks for Blueprint. Should be exciting.
I'm a strong maybe.
Should be. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I'm going to plan around.
Hey, we might need to divide and conquer. There's a lot
around that.
events that week.
I haven't been to Vegas since Realcom a couple years ago. Great time. Played golf actually with a couple of good people from Vornado and Paramount. I had some fun. And then prior to that, I don't think I'd been to Vegas since your bachelor party. So maybe I'm part of the problem here. But where we're going with this is Vegas tourism is in decline. Is that super surprising? It's in the desert, gambling. Everybody can do it on their phone now. You don't have to go sit and smoke butts and rip slots anymore. But there's a pretty significant drop, 11% drop in visitor volume. Somewhat critical. Gambling has taken the biggest hit. However, there's massive renovations happening right now. One of our investors actually was an investor in whatever that one is, the new blue one, whatever the blue casino is, it's there. But there's over $5 billion going into renovations now for all of the casinos on the strip. And yet gambling's in decline. And now everybody's focused on what? Entertainment sphere. What's your take on Vegas? Are we done?
And I don't even think it's just tourism. Now it's from Time, which is not the usual source that I would pull up here, but I think there's a 14% drop in 2020.
Do you not share your fucking show notes? You don't share your show notes. You bogard your show notes. I put all these
your own
show notes with links and data, and then you got some other doc over here. It's Chase's private show notes.
Do my work. I did my own work. I come prepared, my friend, but Time had it as a 14% drop in occupancy. And so I think there's a confluence of things. A bunch of people point to economic strain. Consumers are tightening up a little bit. But several shows ago, I said that you always got to follow who? Kids and the memes.
Ooh.
Figure out the real story. And
what do the memes say about Vegas?
Vegas has been getting memed, apparently. And so a lot of the kids on TikTok, and when you look at Vegas's underlying stats, the behavior shift would make me very nervous if I was Vegas, because the average visitor apparently used to be like right around 40, maybe under 40. Now it's above 40, and like income is well into the hundreds, six figures. And the kids are memeing. I found a bunch of memes where they just post, and this is happening outside of Vegas. We talked about this, I think, maybe 1 or 2 shows ago, maybe 2, where they just post the fast casual lunches that are too expensive. They've been posting $50 quote unquote intimacy kits. They're posting $17 beers. And the meme that's going around is Las Vegas is dead. So the kids, if the kids are memeing you, you're in trouble. Like that's basically like a law of physics.
Yeah,
I think Vegas needs to think about a couple of things. One, the you cannot be a low quality product that's priced like a premium product in
no,
any area of the world, right? Like, and that's
agree. And most of those casinos are low quality products. When you walk, you go into the Wynn, you go to that new blue, whatever it is, blue sapphire, whatever it was, and
yeah,
then you head down the street to some of the brand names that everybody knows and loves. They are just disgusting.
yeah. And so traditional gaming is still growing, apparently 13% year over year June numbers in the US. Obviously, we've got a couple of folks from DraftKings that are investors in HQO, and the big kind of kerfuffle during their rise was they got a ton of pushback from the traditional gaming lobby
Yep.
preventing online. So we're going to see some digital disruption. I'm sure that's a big piece of it. And the kids like doing stuff on their phones and not talking to people and not looking people in the eye and all that stuff. So they're memeing Vegas. They're gambling online. Like gambling age, particularly in young men, is probably scary young. And I think Vegas is feeling it from multiple sides.
Yeah, and all I hear about now, and there's actually a bunch of people in our office who are doing Vegas trips, but they're going to Vegas to go see the Backstreet Boys and whatever nostalgia band that the Sphere has for a run. So, like, that's a way to reinvent. That's where that experiential side of the city. I've never been to the Sphere. I feel like I would get sick in there, but I feel like that can help really build that anchor to a quality product. They get quality acts. It's apparently an incredible experience that can start to bring people back. So Vegas will be less known as the gambling capital of the world and more experiential. It's a lot more to do, right? Isn't that always a quote? There's a Vegas for everybody or something like that.
Yeah, and I think what Vegas is feeling is the Facebook effect, which remember when Facebook opened up to everybody outside of just college kids
Mm.
and it was like, "Oh, your mom's on Facebook and you didn't want to be on Facebook." Well, because now you and I are both married to moms and
There,
they
Vegas.
all go to your point about the shows, the older demographic, young people don't want to hang out with older people. So because it's cool
Right.
for the older crowd to be going there, you have an older demographic. So the kids are going to find other places to go because the whole point of going to Vegas was debauchery where your parents weren't and competition from other regions. Fun stat, apparently California's tribal casinos already generate more revenue than the Vegas Strip does. So,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And the North American casino market is on track to do just under 100 billion in revenue in 25. It's projected to hit 133 billion by 2030. So it's still growing, but it's growing in other areas. So Vegas has got to Vegas has got to up its game. Pennsylvania's iGaming is booming. Online gambling revenue is up 31% year
Yeah.
over year.
Online's rip it. I guess that's an interesting thing. So near us, we have what Foxwoods and Mohegan, which are not a quality product. And you have the Win Boston, I think it's called, over in Everett, which is an incredible quality product, brand new construction, interesting individuals that go there. But I guess to your point, why would I don't need to go to Vegas anymore? I can go to the Win right here in my backyard, right?
A creative depression. It's getting beat up by online. It's getting beat up by
Yeah.
other areas. Like jump the shark. So it's gotta reinvent itself.
Took a break from online gambling. Cash flow is up significantly, but I'm thinking about getting back into it now.
Yeah, but cash flow up. Where's the happiness at?
Exactly. Where's the sentiment? All right, good stuff. Next quick hit. So this is part of a troubling trend. It's actually, speaking of being memed all the time, there's wonderful sort of fin memes or finance memes about private equity guys in suits celebrating their win over buying a house from a single mother of two or something like that in the
Mm,
burbs. But I'm interested to hear your take on this. Investor purchases approach nearly 1 in 3 homes. So in June 2025, investors bought almost a third of all single family homes. That to me, so we talk about interest rates being a housing issue. We talk about high construction costs, high materials costs. You talk about tariffs. Now what's happening is private equity funds or private investors are coming in and they're outbidding you and me with a cash offer on homes. This is to me, this is not good. I don't like this one bit.
Yeah, and I think I think the Wall Street Journal had a big article citing some research. It's something like only 14% of people actually believe the quote unquote American dream is attainable.
Hmm.
And typically the American dream came with your white picket house, home ownership, moving your family up and into your own home. It's how many families historically have developed a lot of their wealth, obviously, sits in home ownership. Houses, I think, up until the narrative of the great financial crisis, quote unquote, always appreciated. And they are appreciating. But now I think this is probably the biggest structural issue that when we think about the dislocation between and where you see a lot of the, I would say, disenfranchised kind of middle class, a lot of it comes down to issues with the kind of home ownership side of things. And on the one hand, I think this type of news and these stats are inviting for the government to come in and try to fix the problem, which I think it's a problem if you have big institutions coming in and snapping up homes and we turn into a significant renters market because of kind of the concept and the promise of people being able to buy and be a homeowner. That's going to be tough for them to compete against organized institutional money. So I think a lot of well-intentioned people will inherently think about regulation, but when things get regulated, what we've seen, and there's that graph that's gone around for years now where you think about healthcare and education and the quality of that has down, and then things that are not regulated and there's competition, the price of TVs and things like that have continued to go down. You can get better product at lower prices when there's a bunch of competition. If I had an answer on this, we would probably not be making this show. We'd be doing something else. So I this is one of the tougher topics. It's very hard to figure out where regulators can make an impactful difference without doing what they typically do, which is seeing prices continue to go up, right? But I'm with you. I don't think it's great. Now, Lori Garbarino also argues that oftentimes when people are tethered to a home,
Lori Garbarino would be your mother.
That's my mom. And so Lori tends to pound the table and say it's not good for people to give up their mobility. She gives a very impassioned speech about the old US of A. People used to cross oceans for economic activity and a better life. Like you have to be willing to move for jobs and things like that. She's very passionate about that. I'm not sure it totally is backed up by data, but that's okay. It's a good speech when she gives it.
Like that.
So there's a lot of factors here in home prices because look, they're not renting it at lower prices, right? And they're certainly not going to do it out of the goodness of their hearts. So
No, there's money to be made. They can arb it. They can take all the equity. Come on, they're building a portfolio.
Yeah, this is one though that I think we'll continue to cover because it's. I also have a take when you actually look at census data, and it's not a popular one, but when people say there's a housing crisis, there really isn't. When you look at total population versus available supply, the issue is affordability of housing near economic activity. It's not really a total housing price problem. And so I think it's a really good headline that politicians use to pound the table. But
so there's available housing, just not in economic zones, not in desirable zones.
Where, yeah. And I'm sure there's a quality problem in the stock. That's where if capital's coming in, that can be a good thing. But obviously, probably what we need here is significantly more competition. I'm sure this is somehow rooted and tied to when we think about banking regulation and how the big banks have gotten bigger and
it's assets under management, man. Putting capital to work.
Yep. So there's something bigger here that we got to keep poking on because if only 14% of people believe in the American dream, obviously that's a huge problem.
Yeah, or the American dream has changed and now you got to buy your house from BlackRock. They're sitting up against you on the other side of the negotiation table.
What a world.
No, thanks. All right, quick hit here. We got two more quick hits before we get to Rex and our quantum review. This one we can be pretty quick on, but it is interesting. Norway's sovereign wealth fund, the largest sovereign wealth fund, is back in on Manhattan office. Why is this important? Sovereign wealth funds invest in real estate all the time. However, they've taken a backseat to office, like a lot of folks. This is exciting because now they're back, right? And they're back in Manhattan. They took a 95% stake in Manhattan office building, which is a great trend for Manhattan, which is a great trend for sovereign wealth funds, which is a great trend for all capital markets. We talked about the capital markets activity when we were talking about the brokerage houses, all of that activity's up. Again, not a huge surprise for sovereign wealth funds invest in real estate, but not in the last couple of years. Manhattan's back.
It's back in a big way. Anytime Norgis is putting money into something, obviously being the biggest sovereign, it's interesting. It's a single asset. A lot of times these big institutions, they move so much money that it's hard for them to write smaller checks. Obviously, they put over $500 million in, I think, directly themselves, if I had the numbers correct. So it's obviously not a small check. However, the single asset, obviously, I'm sure they've got plans for repositioning, getting to the high end of the market where we see leases going, and New York is back. It's a good signal for that market. It's good that they're getting into the office game. So we talked about this last week, but hopefully we see some others following suit, and most importantly, hopefully some other cities start to follow suit and see the rebound. Hopefully it was a good outcome. I don't know if you looked at the numbers, because the seller, I think it was CalSTRS and Silverstein, and shout out to Beacon Capital. I think they're gonna manage the building on behalf of our friends in Norway. But the guy who runs that fund's a fascinating dude. He's got a great podcast where he interviews top business leaders. And when you carry that kind of checkbook, it's probably easy to get good guests. But he gets a good crew on that show. And then in some of the FOIA requests that came out, I forget what it was regarding with regards to Elon, but you can go and read his text messages. He and Elon had a little spat. Did you read about that one?
No.
Yeah, so Elon was pissed at him because they were one of the groups that voted no on Elon's big pay package at
Oh,
Tesla.
yeah.
And then he wanted him to like go to a dinner, and Elon kind of bitched him out in the text, being like, "You vote no on my pay package, and then you expect me to come to some dinner in Norway." It's funny. People should look up those texts. Good little insider exchange there.
I like that. All right, two more quick hits. This one's pretty exciting. We talk about mixed use. We talk about the rise of mixed use. This is not necessarily new. The talk of surf parks have been around for a bit. There's a lot of money going into the experiential, but Virginia Beach, which by the way is somewhat of a surfing town. It's got inconsistent surf. It's not as consistent as Carolinas and the West Coast, but it is somewhat of a surfing town. Just debuted almost $500 million mixed use, and it's all centered around a surf lagoon. So I love this idea. I love going outside the box, or maybe this is inside the box, all around experiences and all mixed use. So there's retail, there's residential, there's commercial, there's everything. And then you can go out and have a little surf.
Experiential real estate, it is the future. I think there's some really interesting development here. Number one, there's a pocket. I did not know this until we got into HQO 2017, 18. Everybody talked about Adam Newman at WeWork, big surf guy. Some of your buddies at Boston Properties, big surf guy. There's definitely a surf community in the commercial real estate world. So they must be, a bunch of our listeners must be pumped about this. And then some guy named Kelly Slater, who
Some
a guy
guy,
at our company,
legend.
Paul Greenhall, kept telling me about Kelly Slater, who I don't know anything about surfing, but apparently he had been pushing hard for this like wave park concept. And what I like about this is that it's experiential
Yep.
retail. It's a whole new flavor. The capex on this it's not going to be an easy thing to replicate.
Yeah,
So
but compared to other extreme sports, golf's not extreme, but golf is an attractor. Skiing, right? Like ski
yeah,
slopes, mountains.
yeah.
Can't put those everywhere.
Anything that's weather contingent, if you can take the variability of the weather out of it, which I know prior to HQO and some of my sports investing activity, I got to look at Topgolf's deck. And Topgolf, I think the one thing that I'm questioning about this is Topgolf was a alcohol business wrapped in golf. It
Yeah,
cost, I
right.
think they publicly had talked about it was like 25 million per location to really get that get Topgolfs off the ground. These are obviously going to be more expensive, but you can't be drinking booze. And particularly this, I think, will appeal to kids. But a lot of the margin in that business came through food and beverage. So I don't know how that's going to work exactly. And if this has got durability beyond being a gimmick. Again, I'm not a surf person. And I think for like mega surf enthusiasts, I don't know how the product works. Like I've seen videos online of like little waves and it looks fun for people who are new to it. Probably a good way to learn surfing. So it's probably a good on ramp for the sport. But
Yeah.
dude, the sport is messed up. Like they have to bucket 2 weeks. So like they can't get TV rights deals. They can't get media rights deals because they just show up and then they got to wait for waves. And so
Yeah.
like people who go, they don't have like a audience because it's hard to take 2 weeks and be like, yeah, I don't know
Well,
when
it's
they're,
also
you
the
know,
best waves are in incredibly remote locations.
but I like any experiential anchored project that they're testing something new. So I hope it works.
Yeah. All right. Last quick hit. This is a fascinating headline. Why your boss is always booked. So we talk about return to office a bunch. We've talked about some of the large corporations, PwC, Microsoft, Amazon, etc., getting everybody back in, all the major banks getting everybody back in 5 days a week. We also talked about the sort of the labor statistics where the job market is tough. Where this article goes is, are we seeing, well, we are seeing a fundamental shift and a restructuring where in 2017, the median ratio was one manager to every 5 employees, which is good for, who was it, Bezos's pizza? What was this, two
Two
pizza test?
pizza rule. If the team can't eat 2 pizzas, then team's too big.
Now, the average, which is probably even higher now, but in 2023 is ballooned to one manager for every 15 employees. So
Mm.
there's big cuts happening. Everybody's back in the office. Everybody feels stressed. Is this the right experience that we're looking for?
So there was a gross over calculation to middle management during the ZERP era. We see this everywhere, right? Like a lot of if you go,
But even back before the GFC in 2008, I was at Fidelity at the time, and the largest cuts there at Fidelity, the reason why it was all public news, but was middle management. They shrunk. I was entry level. Abby Johnson was my boss 6 times up. And then at one point I reported directly to her because middle management was gone. So not just, yeah, we did not have one-on-ones.
UNA Johnson just doing
We
one.
didn't have one-on-ones. It just, they cut out everybody else and then they put a few people back in, but it was far less. But
Exciting story, unfortunately.
technically I was a direct report.
Not to
So
brag, not to brag.
not just in the ZERP era, back to the GFC.
Well, I think there's a bunch of things. Like there's this massive over hiring, and I think the online term for it was the surplus elites, right? So you had,
Well, money's free. I gotta pay somebody to do my job for me. I'm not gonna manage it. Manage
yeah,
people doing my job.
yeah. I forget if it was Chamath or someone came up with the term surplus elites, which got a lot of attention and flack, which means he knows what he's doing. But it was one manager for 5 employees, and I think the general framework came from Harvard Business Review studies from the GE era school of management in the 80s, which probably made a lot of sense. So I think there needed to be a correction, particularly with how good information access has gotten, how good digital tooling has gotten. You need more doers than overseers. So I think a bunch of this is good. And I think the much more structural change with AI is, if in general, inherently in knowledge work, if you're not someone who is critically thinking and using the tools available to you, and we talk about this at HQ all the time, if you don't have some sort of muscle and ability to self-develop, your career will be more challenging. That said, I think 1 to 15,
It's high.
feels a little high. It's just impossible. Look, I of all people, every probably 2 years at HQO, I try to do a meeting audit of the company where we look at the aggregate stats from our calendar software to see how much time do people spend in
Right.
meetings,
Versus
right?
doing actual work, call it.
Yeah, it was Steve Jobs who said if people have 5 pounds of stuff but a 10-pound bag, they'll fill the other five with shit. You just see this gravitational pull of people naturally to waste time in shitty meetings. I think this is indicative of the ratio should go up of managers to direct reports. But I do think there's going to be this laggard gap where we tend to forget about the younger generations of learning and development, and even they need to learn how to manage. At some point they need to be managers, right?
Yeah.
People do need managers. So it will be, I would expect, like all things, when people are like, meetings are dead or office is dead or
Over rotate.
whatever is dead, like that's usually a really good time to zig when everybody else zags.
Very
So
Warren Buffett of you.
yeah, well, it's easier said than done, but I think the structure of the workplace needs to be completely reimagined. And I don't mean physically, that obviously we talk about that all the time. We believe in that, but it's a trend that like anytime all of corporate America starts running and doing something,
Hmm.
there's always we should be asking questions because it's like, all right, we read one email from Elon where he was like, no organization, like completely flat doers, like they're very unique companies that he runs with very unique talent. So I think it would be smart for everyone to their heads and really think through like structurally what outcomes their organization needs.
There's no one size fits all. It's all
Right.
about the
Right.
current
Well
talent.
said.
It's all about the current talent that you have. Now, you made 2 points before we move on that I wanna circle back on. One was how we learn and develop is changing. So, like, the days again, call back to Fidelity, it was very much structural. Like, I had to go to, like, education classes within Fidelity to work my career up the ladder, right? It
Oof.
was like the development was forced on me. That was
Facts.
a way of doing things, and I learned a bunch, it was great. But now with artificial intelligence and the tools that are there, you need to be able to self-teach a lot
Right.
of them,
Right.
right? But at
But
the
you
same
still need that validate, like
but at the same time, that's my point is you
reading
can't
from the,
leave
yeah.
these younger generations behind
Right.
because they were already significantly impacted by COVID and the work from home era of real solitude, and then even the disruption in education for a lot of these folks not going back to college and high school or whatever. Now these people are entering the workforce. You can't leave them behind. You can't just say go learn it all by yourself with no guidance. There's got to be a happy medium.
Right. And I agree we need more player coaches, right?
Right.
Like we see this, and this will, I think it's Jim Collins' books that we talk a lot about, whether it's Good to Great, Built to Last, whatever, Entrepreneurship 2.0. The companies that develop people internally, the people who have done the job. The famous example back in the day was the woman who ended up running McDonald's, started as a cashier, right? So
Yeah.
there's something good about learning from people who actually know the job rather than the people coming out of business school who just were taught how to be a manager. And it's like a management applies to all things. Eh. Something about mastering the craft and managing people's craft rather than just managing people as a blunt skill set. And so I agree with, obviously, with tooling, everybody needs to be a producer. We believe that at HQO, or at least have been a producer. But anytime we see all companies that like, no knock on the show notes, we have Bear and some examples of companies that are really cutting middle management. I'm sure they're well run businesses, or maybe not, who knows. But it's like, well, there's a ton of them just all now doing it. And this was the same thing with return to office, all
Right.
this. Like, they move as a herd.
Yep.
So I think it's smart to like steelman that internally for companies.
Like that. All right, let's jump to Rex U, new section, all about real estate experience, a little bit of a longer dive than a quick hit. Today, we want to talk a little bit about feedback from folks, both on the newsletter and the pod, and actually both internal and external in our company. They want to hear you talk a little bit more about the experience gap. And I guess let's hear your definition of the experience gap. We've framed it up. We've talked about it. I think you and I have both said experience gap a handful of times already on the show.
Mm.
Frame it up, give us the definition of how we're thinking about it. And it's not an H2O thing, obviously. We do talk about it H2O, but it's drastically or significantly impacting the market. And then talk about the reason why it's so important with sort of financial metrics, financial data.
Yeah. So the experience gap is relatively simple in the sense that it's the difference between what the demand side tenants expect and what real estate delivers. And the structural change that's happened, which has happened in every other industry, that starts to get pressured by digital and the internet and all things technology, is that it just has happened faster. We've had physical unbundling work, excuse me, can happen anywhere. And particularly in anything workplace, I don't even just say office, but the drag is very real. And so when you see the New York numbers of leasing coming
Mhm.
back, New York is always a leader when it comes to commercial real estate for a lot of different reasons. And obviously for the economic composition of that city. But it tends to be further ahead on the curve of
Mhm.
new amenities, new experience, all of that stuff. And you're seeing the numbers are coming back in a very positive way. And then you have the latest CMBS delinquency numbers, I think spiked. I don't know if it's an all time high, but they're way up. So you have a bunch of distress. It's still relatively focused in a small portion down market that all the people in the industry highlighted. It's the majority of it is at the bottom, which makes sense. But we did a comprehensive study on a lot of buildings where we took your what we would define as experiential properties compared to non-experiential properties. And what we found is on average, they had 8% lower occupancy, 17% lower rental rates. And we tried to normalize this, obviously, for rental rates. And that compounds to somewhere around an estimated 23% NOI drag. If you have a 23% NOI drag, that's going to be on par with a third or 35% hit to your overall forecasted asset value, right? So you're going to get a higher cap rate. And for everybody, a higher cap rate means a lower value of the asset compared to a lower cap rate means higher value of the asset. And I think what's proving out is something that we talk about and we've named the villain here, the experience gap, and the difference between kind of the old school transactional landlord compared to experiential landlords that are, they're trying to build their organizational infrastructure to be much more adaptive, which in hotels, you see it in other areas of business where they have to earn their customers back every day. And the long-term lease has set up the industry in a way where it's a yield industry, right? Big
Mhm.
money looking for a place to park money and collect their returns year over year. But the good operators that are going to continue to win investor dollars are going to be the ones, experiential landlords, as we call them, that find a way to mitigate the risk of what are much, much faster changing tenant demands and expectations. And so the tenant side just has significantly more leverage in the equation. When you can work from your laptop and shoot a show like this, sitting in our homes in Duxbury, Mass, the demand and need for the product and service has other forms of competition. It's proving out in this kind of split
Mhm.
between like mega high record rental rates for the winners and then just nobody showing up at a number of buildings.
When you talk about 35% hit to asset value and a 23% sort of negative NOI drag, sure, you're talking about cap rates, but the reality is you're talking about the difference of a sort of positive cash flow asset and an asset going back to the bank. And I think that's where you're talking about the commercial mortgage backed securities, the CMBS. So yeah, you're right. Manhattan, and I think where you're going, and we've said this a few times, is you have a tale of two markets, which you outlined nicely between legacy and experiential and next gen. My question for you in a second is going to be around geo spots or in trends of geo spots. But in Manhattan, like you said, biggest year since 2019. Okay. So something is happening in Manhattan. And then you're seeing on the other side of the house, you're right, commercial mortgage backed securities delinquency rates are at the highest rate and even higher than the darkest days of the 2008 financial crisis. So if you look at those two bits of data, you could one argue that they're incredibly contradicting. Hey guys, I thought you said real estate was back and coming back. Look at New York City's numbers. Then the other side of it is, well, are we sitting on a ticking time bomb with CMBS? So is it geo? Is it the top of the market versus the bottom of the market? What do you see?
I would say it's not even geo, it's submarket, right?
Okay.
So we talked about this in our all hands the other day, where you go to downtown Boston, it's dead, but you go to Back Bay, you go to the Seaport area, and they're performing much better, right? So it is submarket by submarket. I do think you got to start at the top. So from an economic perspective, obviously South and Sunbelt is doing well. They've got good demographic numbers, a bunch of young people moved down there COVID. And we're also not just seeing to 6.9%. That's the highest since 2015, right? This experiential trend, I think, applies across all asset types. And I would make the case that it's even going to happen in industrial. Industrial is different, obviously, than other areas, but you see how the leaders are really trying to cater to the experience of the people that work in industrial. Really smart industrial landlords know deeply the needs of the people that work the industrial properties. So it is submarket oriented. It's going to be operator oriented. Like too long, the industry has tried to ride the wave of good location,
Yep.
good tailwinds in the overall sector. Like, yeah, those things are all important. And when you're talking to big money, oftentimes they can't get it to 1 to 2 clicks deeper, but they're going to have to in order to, I would say, in a sustainable, repeatable way, generate returns. Like you have to understand on tighter feedback loops what type of product is going to be insulated from obviously the changing demands. So I think this is structural, not a cyclical change. That obviously it's
All
the
right.
whole concept of what we work on.
Yeah, speaking of structural, so I'm going to tee up a little bit. We got a bunch of data on this specific city. What we're trying to do is we're trying to talk about and understand. The show is called the Quantum City Podcast or the Quantum City Initiative. I don't even know what our show is called, actually. The Quantum City Podcast, right? QCP. But here's the Quantum Review. Is Dubai the playbook? Is Dubai what we're looking at as a cookie cutter? Well, I guess cookie cutter is a bad word because we know one size doesn't fit all. But is Dubai and what they're doing with their economic development the future of what every city should be doing?
So I think what Dubai has absolutely nailed, when you go to their website and just you want to peer into a different world, and it's depressing since obviously the internet was a collaboration out in the California educational system. I think one of the computers might have sat in London that got connected to the internet. But when you look at how Dubai is run, just some of the quick numbers on digital transactions, they have over 63 million digital transactions of people entering, exiting Dubai. They have Dubai Now payment transactions, 5.2 million, just under 30 million parking tickets paid, smart apps. Their digital transactions total almost at 700 million. Resident transactions, almost 6 million. Registered users of the UAE pass, they have a kind of a national pass, which is almost at 10 million. And then Empower Digital Bill Pay, so they have really strong bill pay, is almost at 1 million. And can you do some of these things in Western cities? Sure. But is it this well organized? Is it this synchronized? No. I think there's an argument to be made on the flip side of the balance between user privacy and the convenience and kind of user experience of what Dubai has done. But that's why I think competition is a good thing. I think people should be allowed to vote with their feet and go to different locations depending on what it is that they value. But you can't argue that because they have such new infrastructure, because they were able to take a central position on thinking through, like, all right, if we were to build a smart city, how would we do it?
Is that the largest differentiator? Is that a key piece? I don't want to interrupt you too much because you're on on a little bit of a heater, but that is so important that they built it from scratch recently,
Yeah.
right? All new infrastructure. It's not a retrofit. You're not coming in and taking the bones from London, Boston, New York City, whatever.
Yeah, look, I am a stark opponent of central planning, so I can strongman and steelman both sides of this. But I do think with modern technologies and particularly people from traditional commercial real estate and even people outside of commercial real estate, I would say the average citizen, when they hear the word crypto, like crypto needs a little bit of a rebranding. And then you get into the technology community, and they'll argue that decentralized technology existed before crypto. So, like, I don't really care about the form factor. What I care about is how smart people don't accept the answer of like, we have to go one way or the other. The word and exists, and we can have both incredibly frictionless governance where you can get done the things that you need to get done, and we can protect privacy, we can protect individual rights, we can do those things simultaneously. I think the model is a really good one where if you have the will and the skill, we have the skill. The question is, do we have the will in the West to update some of the infrastructure with regards to digital?
Mm.
Do we have the will to push through red tape and barriers? But if you don't, you will not be competitive, right? Like you see it in, just look at any company in any industry that's been disrupted, and cities are going to face the same thing. I think Miami, who we talked about several shows ago, they have very similar numbers, and they're on top of this in a way that balances, I think, the freedoms that we talk about with the much more frictionless experience that I think cities that find the will to do that will continue.
Yeah, and it's not just will and skill, it's deep pockets.
Ching.
You need money. We talk about Moynihan train hall and just that infrastructure. You talk about DC's Union Station. You're talking about massive developments. Now, that's the one thing that Dubai's got going for it. You look across the board, the numbers are there. Staggering amount of investment dollars, staggering amount of investment transactions, staggering amount. The office rents rose 36% year over year in Q2 compared to last year. Rental transactions are up. Vacancy rates are about 7% citywide. Top of the market, sort of class A space. There's absolutely none available. And there's obviously hundreds of billions of dollars still going into the city. That, to me, political will, skill, and dollars are what we need.
Yeah. And look, a lot of people don't like the tactics or style of the administration. But one thing that I believe in deeply, and I don't care political party you want to be a part of, as I'll continue to repeat, I have always been an independent. However, culture does matter. The environment that you're in does matter, and upgrading our infrastructure, making things nice and clean, and I would say like a general feeling of optimism, I think is important. And I think this is both tied to beautification of our spaces and cities, but it's also, does it feel modern? Like when you go look at these Middle Eastern cities that are well run, you look at Singapore, it's well run, it's clean. I do think that generationally has an impact. I think people want to live in those environments. So I think it's a good example. I think it's good to look at other areas that we can learn from, and like competition is a good thing.
I like that. All right. One more bit of news this week. Couple bits of news, couple things. You're into collectibles, not purchasing whatever you drew, consuming. There's a level of wealth involved. I'm a big Star Wars guy. I don't think you're a Star Wars guy. I'm a big Star Wars.
I like Star Wars.
All right.
Not a big, I wouldn't say I'm a big Star Wars.
I'm a big Star Wars guy. I got a couple lightsabers upstairs in my house right now. I do not have Darth Vader's lightsaber expected to hit auction this week and fetch $3 million.
Yeah, clearly you're not a big Star Wars guy.
Fuck, I'm not a big Star Wars guy. Okay, next bit of news this week. Are you a K-pop guy? Are you a K-pop guy?
The Demon Hunters movie?
Are you a K-pop guy?
Again, I don't know if I'm a guy of K-pop, but Demon Hunters. I was literally just at the bus stop talking to people about the Netflix K-pop Demon Hunters movie. Absolutely. Oh, it's great. It's a great.
Unbelievable.
When I first put it on, I was like, what is this shit? And then next thing you know, this movie's good. Yeah.
Oh my
Good.
god, it is, and I think we're even behind because I think they were starting to play it in clubs, Golden and Soda Pop, like,
Soda
in
Pop.
June. But the thing with Soda Pop, it's the demon song, so I won't fucking listen to it. I will not let my 4-year-old daughter listen to
Yeah,
it.
but then he turns out to be okay, right? Like,
Yeah,
spoiler.
whoa. But the reason why I wanna talk about K-pop, one, huge fan, K-pop Demon Hunters, unbelievable. It's all we play. My kids are about to wake up. We're almost at 7 a.m. here. So what's gonna happen? My daughter's gonna come downstairs and she's gonna say, "Can I put the movie on that we dance to?" Yes, we dance to it. It's what Netflix is doing to it. So this was interesting. Netflix Netflix is the distributor of K-pop Demon Hunters. They debuted the movie in June, or they debuted the movie slightly before that. Then they went nationwide to
Mm,
theaters where it exploded,
mm,
soared to the top of the US box office, right?
yeah.
For one weekend. Then they yanked it. And
Oh,
they
I
yanked it.
like that move.
What is that all about?
Yeah, but this is the thing, zigging and zagging, man. Everyone, it's like, well, we got to go to theaters, and then like they all did the same thing, and then they're sitting there talking about how the economics are broken. Distribution, look, streaming. I still, even though you and I did media before we went into commercial real estate technology, I still don't totally understand the economics of why streaming is so expensive, other than the customer acquisition costs. But what I love, love, love,
The
love.
economics are so expensive. If you looked at those stock prices of Netflix and everybody else,
Yeah, I know. But they like still a lot of these guys can't crack. Now Netflix, like this is just Jim Collins, like own your, he calls it the fox versus the hedgehog. Like they're the
right.
hedgehog, man. They just know their business. They're super focused. They
I
don't
think
from it. And they know that they built a movement that would get people to pay with
yeah.
their feet, go out to see these movies, limited offering. So there's scarcity of supply. Like, love this. And it's just a jam. It's a banger.
Yeah, it's an absolute jam. I think the cost. I think what will be interesting to see is the cost to produce entertainment movies, right? With actors' fees and all of that. It is immense, or was
Mm,
immense, right? Then you saw, and those were predominantly done by the large movie studios. Then
yeah,
you saw obviously Apple TV and Netflix, and these folks, Amazon, come in, start to produce their own, start to buy rights to specific movies, and they still paid exorbitant dollars, which is why we pay so much for what we do. What'll be interesting to see is what happens with the tooling with artificial intelligence and how that
right.
changes the landscape of development of their unit of production and makes it much cheaper.
Yeah.
Because every year I get the email from, who is it, Reed Hastings? He's the CEO of Netflix, right? I get the email
I believe
being
he's
like, another buck, or maybe set that, or whatever, another buck. Oh, it's another dollar this year, another
well,
dollar this year.
yeah, they just slowly get
Great
you.
pricing strategy. But at some point, it's got to come down.
There's got to be some efficiencies in production costs, but what they did here is the Marvel playbook, right? Thomas Tull, shout out, former Hamilton alum like
Oh, yeah.
myself, he did the Batman movies, and his whole kind of
What was
theme,
that? Legendary Pictures? Is that what it
yeah,
was?
which I think he sold to a Chinese company and did very well. But what he did that was so smart was he de-risked for the movie studios back in the day. He's like, look, if you have an installed fan base, you take one of the variables of demand out of the equation, right? Like people will go see Batman or whatever comic book. The Comic Con movement
Yeah.
showed that like these people are fervent. And so like if you make the product good, then it's going to boom. And they've made it appeal to more than just the Comic Con people. But if this streaming to the theaters model works, it's like it de-risks it because all the marketing budget for local theaters and all this stuff, like it's going to make the content libraries even more valuable if you can
Yep.
move feet into the theaters and reinvigorate some of that. So this is, again, though, it was like however many years ago, no one's ever going to go to a movie again. Like,
Yeah.
not true. Going to the movies is awesome, but it's
The,
bar is higher. The bar is higher.
especially with the recliner chairs now,
Yeah, they're great.
and you can get a
Experiential.
martini. You can get a
Experiential. Even
martini
better
delivered to your chair. You
Yeah.
click the button. I'll
You
have a
got
martini in a turkey club while
you
I watch a movie.
you got to compete with my house that's owned by BlackRock.
Nice callback.
I could watch it in my house, but
Nice
if
callback.
you get the install base K-pop Demon Hunters, then theaters will be all over it.
I wish that we had the rights to play Golden or Takedown. Justin will have to work on that on our way
Yeah,
out.
Takedown sick.
Love
Great
to
song.
play that song on the way out.
What a storyline. What a pickle she was in.
Oh my goodness, dude. There's honestly
The
there's a lot of
hero's journey.
there's a lot of gaps for me,
Mm.
and I don't even want to get into it because it's NC-17 and would get pulled from YouTube going into some of the theories that I have about the backstory of some of these
There's some
demon
holes,
hunters.
but they left it. It's clearly getting a sequel, no doubt.
Oh my God,
Clearly.
it's unbelievable. Demon
Clearly.
Hunters 2. I'd like to buy the rights to that. Appreciate you jumping on early. I'm going to go hit them long. I'm going to go hit them straight. I'm going to go take some more money from some of our customers today on the golf course in a little gamble. Keep the feedback coming, everybody. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming out.
Godspeed out there.